What's up, Sixers fans? It's the Sixers Talk podcast presented to you by William University. I'm Ben Berry. You can follow me at I am Ben Berry on Twitter as well as Instagram. I'm joined by the one, the only, the great writer from NBC Sports Philadelphia, Noah Levick. Noah, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for hyping me up as always. Far too kind. But doing all right. Yeah, 5-game winning streak for the Sixers. They're taking advantage of a weaker section of the schedule here. Doc Rivers is back, cleared COVID-19 protocols, so we're chugging as long as usual, and the Sixers are racking up some wins.
Sixers taking advantage of this lull in the schedule, the weaker schedule, as you said. So we're going to take advantage of Danny Palmel's not being here and have fun today. So let's start off. Well, we're going to get into Embiid and Drummond playing on the floor at the same time. Danny Green's comments about the fans needing to back off. Tobias Harris having a bounce back game. But let's start off with Joel Embiid, Mr. Process himself. He had another 30-point game, his eighth in a row, the first Sixers player since Allen Iverson. What are you seeing from Embiid that just make him so dominant on the court?
I think just every single matchup, the players he's going against, it feels a little bit unfair. Wendell Carter Jr., I think of him as the main defender when Embiid scored his career high 50 in February of last year. And again, he got in some foul trouble last night. And then Freddie Gillespie, who's trying to carve out an NBA career for himself, was Orlando's backup center in this game with Robin Lopez out because of health and safety protocols. So you can probably do this in almost every matchup. You can find a reason that Embiid is especially well equipped to dominate, but you go across the league and you try to find centers who are actually good at guarding him, and you can't come up with many names. Al Horford has historically done a nice job and was the main guy this year when Embiid shot 3 for 17 on, I believe, December 1st in Boston. But outside of that, you look at most of the games when Embiid has struggled, and a lot of it has just come down to he's missing comfortable shots from the mid-range, and he's not doing that right now. As you said, he's playing especially well on the road. This is, not the first time he's been linked with Iverson as far as the scoring numbers and piling up these games with a bunch of points. So I think it's really simple in that he's just much better than most of the defenders he goes up against. And then I think also this season you've seen the aggression in terms of really working hard, especially early in the shot clock, to establish deep post position. And he's very dangerous when he does that, even though he does have this ability to, of course, score outside of the paint and hit three-pointers. When he buries that defender, in deep in the post, usually Joel Embiid is going to come out on top, and that was the case as well last night. I didn't think it was one of his best games overall, but that does speak to the dominance that he can rather casually put up 30 points.
Yeah, it wasn't one of his best games overall, but it was a very good game. It's what the Sixers needed. And something you mentioned was, well, when the Sixers get the ball, he hustles down court and he seals off his man, which has been very great to see. And it seems like he's getting back in a rhythm of trusting his teammates. He's seeing open teammates on the perimeter, cutting. He's moving the ball around. I know in the past, specifically in the Hawk series, it seemed like the only person he trusted was Seth Curry. And I think that's starting to change now. Would you agree with that, or?
I think that's a good assessment. I think overall, I've pointed to the numbers in a few stories I've written. He's having his best year ever as a passer. And I think that's a great point, that a lot of that does come down to trust and does come down to just, okay, double team comes. I know where the defense is going to be. I know who's going to be open. And whoever the open guy is, the right play is to get that player the ball. Last night, he did have 6 turnovers for the second consecutive game. So that's a small negative note, but still has his lowest turnovers percentage for a season thus far. Still has his best assist to usage ratio. This is per cleaning glass. And I do think that is indicative of he's reading the game well. Furkan Korkmaz had a great comment a few nights back where he said, just sharing the floor with Embiid, he sees his eyes and he sees that he knows where the defender is going to be and where his own players are going to be. And it sounds simple enough, but obviously for a player like Embiid that's double teamed so much, that's very important, being able to know what's going to happen before the ball is actually in his hands. And I think that's been evident this year. And I agree with your point about the trust. I think for the most part, that's been there for all of his teammates.
So Embiid, we got to see him on the court with his best friend, his frenemy, and Embiid turned friend. I don't know what they call themselves. I really don't know the relationship. But when I saw it at first, Embiid and Drummond on the court at the same time, I thought Doc Rivers lost his mind. It worked out pretty well for a while.
It did. The Sixers in this game were down as many as 11 in the third quarter, and they kept making a run to erase that deficit with those two on the floor, which I was also a little surprised by. I thought there was disastrous potential there, at least offensively, but there was some logic behind it, and then the Sixers were especially shorthanded last night, Paul Reed being the latest Sixer to enter health and safety protocols. Doc Rivers only using a 9-man rotation, and then Isaiah Joe left this game early with a back of right leg soreness injury, so he wasn't available in the second half. And the Sixers, not for the first time this season, were having a subpar rebounding night. So you can't put a better rebounding lineup out there than a Drummond Embiid front court. And they took advantage of all of that size and all of that rebounding prowess on the floor. So I am intrigued to see if it means anything moving forward, or it was just the circumstances were so unique and Doc Rivers went with his gut that was the right call. But credit to him for that decision, which ultimately paid off, even if perhaps it might have brought back some bad memories for Sixers fans of the last time they tried to play two bigs together with Joel Embiid and Al Horford. But hey, maybe in short doses, this actually makes some sense.
It made me think of, it was an all-star game, I want to say maybe 2003 or 4. The West had Yao Ming, Shaq, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett on the floor, and Dirk Nowitzki wanted to run point guard, and that's what popped in my mind at first when I saw it. But like you said, it did work. You mentioned that the Sixers had a bad rebounding night, and coming back to Embiid, he finished the game with 5 rebounds. It seemed like he's definitely capable of getting 10, 15 rebounds a night. And why is it some games he just randomly only ends up with 5, 6 rebounds?
Well, I think as of late, there have been some odd games where unexpected players have piled up relatively high rebound totals. I know Korkmaz on Monday got his first ever career double-double, just balls happened to go to him on the defensive glass. I think Seth Curry last night also had 7 rebounds, which is a little unusual. I think for Embiid, part of it just strategically might be some of the games where he's being a little more aggressive in pick and roll coverage and therefore out more on the perimeter and less frequently in positions to get rebounds in the paint, perhaps. I think last night, at least for the first half, was again not a strong one for the Sixers perimeter defense. So there were a lot of situations where Embiid had to scramble or was in bad spots trying to contest guards going downhill and attacking him at the rim. So maybe those are some of the reasons for it. Maybe some of it is just randomness, as you said. But look, the Sixers overall, it's become quite clear that rebounding is one of their main weaknesses as a team, to the extent that there was some logic in playing Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond together, because those are two big men who tend to gobble up rebounds and perhaps could clean up some of those issues. So I think Ben Simmons' absence has been felt more than I expected in that regard. And I think just the trickle down effects of so often this team has had this rather small backcourt of Tyrese Maxey and Seth Curry. That's also clearly been a factor here in the Sixers being among the league's worst rebounding teams.
Yeah, it's definitely like the Ben Simmons part of it, the small backcourt. I thought last night Embiid just trying to stay out of foul trouble early, doing so much on the defensive end. I thought those things may have played a role in it, but I just wanted to bounce it off your head, get a different look of eyes on it, and get someone else's opinion. We'll wrap up this first segment. Tobias Harris, you and Danny talked about on the last pod his back and forth with the fans booing him telling the fans not to clap after he made a jumper. He had a somewhat of a normal game. He dropped in 22 points, came off of 19 shots, not the most efficient, but 50% from beyond the arc, 3 or 6. It would be great if we can get this from Tobias night in and night out, 20 plus points a game. But whether that happens or not, it was nice to see last night. Do you think this is the turning point of Tobias turning things around moving forward, or is it? Do you still want to see more?
I think the Sixers would like to see more. I think, nevertheless, they're pleased that he is playing like himself again and scoring, over 20 points and snapped an 0 for 12 drought from 3 with that first long range make. And then you saw a little of the confidence return. And though he said to reporters post game, he thought there were about 4 that he passed up, which I thought was, an honest admission. The fact that he did take 6 and knock 3 down, obviously that's good, given that he was at 29% from long range heading into this game. I think last night I felt like was an illustration of what I've mentioned a few times, where you just figure he was bound to start playing normal Tobias Harris basketball, which isn't all-star level basketball, but it's a player who can be a good primary offensive initiator, playing with second unit players as he did last night. It's a guy who can take advantage when he's stronger than whoever's guarding him and bully his way into mid-range shots and score over guys. And yeah, it's someone who can put up 20-10 pretty regularly and give a little bit of complimentary scoring punch to the Sixers, even if, of course, to I think a lot of the fan base, it's not sufficient, relative to the contract that everyone is well aware of. But definitely a nice bounce back night for him against one of his former teams. I also thought it was, noticeable even on the broadcast. Tom McGinnis pointed it out that the Sixers bench was very enthusiastic whenever Harris would shoot the ball or whenever he'd get a jumper to go down. And you could see everyone was rooting for him and trying to uplift him. And there was a lot of support for him, with his teammates being cognizant of all this recent buzz about the back and forth Monday with the fans and the frustration that Harris has with, the subpar start relatively to his season. So nice night. Not sure it illustrates any sort of, massive, incredibly great stretch of basketball is ahead of us, but at least he's not mired in a slump and these, deep frustrations anymore. Now that he has a more normal Tobias Harris game under his belt.
It was definitely a nice bounce back game. Tobias had an up and down year, and I like his comment saying it came out of frustration. He knows what the fans expect, and he expects more of himself. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Coming back, We're going to talk about some of his teammates' response to that and also what Noah's working on over at the website at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com.
Start college, build skills, and complete your degree with Wilmington University. 100% online options and affordable tuition makes WilmU work for you. Learn more at wilmu.edu.
There's so much to explore in Valley Forge in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Montgomery County is composed of charming towns and main streets, and each with its own personality, style, and unique vibe. Whether you are looking to get away with family or enjoy a special trip with friends, leave behind the stress of planning and use our guide to find some of the most amazing things to do. Explore which town and main street suit you best. Visit makeitmainstreet.com to plan your getaway today. Noah. Sixers coming off a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah, you're streaking.
Yep, streaking is always nice. It seems like things are at least pointing in the right direction. Right before we went to that little break, we talked about Tobias Harris' response to the fans, the back and forth, him coming back against Orlando, having a decent game. The other day, one of his teammates, Danny Green, who has repeatedly over the last couple of months been, I don't want to say critical or harsh, but said the fans, in short, the fans don't need to be booing the players. Went along those lines again, but he said that the team, they believe in Tobias, they have faith in him. He knows he has to play better. The fans didn't respond to that too well, it seems like. What was your response to all that?
I guess I can understand both sides of it, but my main response is I don't think Danny Green said anything outrageous or unexpected. I think as a teammate, he wants to be supportive of his guy. I guess the aspect that might have rubbed some folks the wrong way, again, is just the implication that players should have preferences about how fans behave as opposed to just accepting whatever comes their way. But I think Danny Green tends to be quite honest and doesn't have much of a filter. Something that actually comes to mind here is I got a chance to speak with Harris one-on-one last year and asked him about Green, who's another New York guy, about whether he's like this behind the scenes with some of the bluntness. And Harry's kind of laughed and said, "Oh yeah, big time. I think Danny Green just 24/7 says whatever is on his mind. And he's not the type of person to filter himself with the thought of, oh, I need to sound a certain way to Sixers fans." So for better or worse, I think for the most part, Danny Green's going to give you exactly what he's thinking, and he's not going to pretend that he wants to be booed or likes hearing one of his teammates be booed. Yeah, as we discussed on the last podcast with Danny, I think the boos for Harris were very much understandable, and the frustration on both sides, it's easy to get where that was coming from. But as far as Danny Green, yeah, I think as a teammate, you want a guy who has your back. Danny Green most certainly is that guy. And Danny Green also, I've learned, over this time covering him, is as honest as it gets. And he's not going to sugarcoat stuff or try to frame his message to please a certain audience, I think.
No, I haven't had the opportunity to really sit down or meet Danny Green one-on-one, but reading his comments and listening to him, I had no problem with what he said. I thought he definitely put the accountability on Tobias Harris. He said Tobias knows he has to play better. And I understand fans wanting to boo a player, and it's not even a Philadelphia thing. It's any sport across the country. I think fans will boo players when they're not playing up to their potential, their contract, or whatever. He said Tobias knows he has to play better. So, and I think we all completely agree with that. Tobias agrees with it. I think it was him backing his teammate while also telling the fans, like, you're not helping. A lot of fans did not like that. I would say that's on them. But I think you and I definitely see eye to eye on this and agree that Danny Green was just backing his teammate. I find it funny, though, or comical that Danny Green went out there for the first like 17 minutes yesterday and practically did nothing. And now fans are on him. So I just thought that's just unintentional comedy because you know me, I like chaos.
Yeah, I saw he was semi-viral on Twitter. Just the fact that he was getting his cardio in, he was running up and down and not exactly recording numbers on the stat sheet, shall we say? But no, yeah, Danny Green, I think continues to be a valuable member of this team, even if he doesn't always please all the members of this fan base. Of course, as we've talked about before, it's going to be really intriguing what happens here when both him and Matisse Thybulle are healthy. It's going to be interesting to see whether, again, he's still on this team after the February 10th trade deadline. But for now, I think like you look inside the Sixers locker room, like everyone there is happy Danny Green is a part of this squad. And yeah, I think he's a very savvy and intelligent guy. So like he could try to please the fans if he want, and he could hit some of these notes that we've seen Philly athletes and coaches try to hit in the past of like, it's all about accountability and we love the fans' passion and, the fans pay to see us play and any boos are warranted when we're not winning. And, he could hit all these notes, but Danny Green's going to say what he thinks. And I think his main priority here was just like supporting a friend and teammate in Tobias Harris. And so that's the route he decided to go, even if not everyone was thrilled with his words.
I hear you, man. Noah, two things before we get out of here. One, what are you working on over at NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com?
Yeah, so we'll eventually have another film review down the line. I'll put that out in the world as I did with our Tyrese Maxey film review a little bit little back. Something before that February 10th trade deadline. We'll have some analysis on the ins and outs of this team. Continuing to cover things day to day in terms of the latest with who's in and out of these protocols. We'll have coverage tomorrow, beginning with storylines to watch for this Sixers-Spurs matchup at Wells Fargo Center.
Not Sixers related. I lied. I got a couple more things. Not Sixers related, but basketball related. Do you see Kyle Lowry get ejected last night?
I actually missed that. What happened?
He passed the ball to the referee, underhanded, and got ejected. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It is comical, and I don't want to jump on referees. I'm not that person. But, man, it was just a bad look. Like, everyone was shocked it happened. Underhand pass to the referee, got ejected.
Yeah, you'd think a veteran would get a little more slack. A respected player like that, yeah.
Now that you said that, I remember, I think the referee, it was a rookie referee too,
right,
which is just really bad look. And the other thing is, not basketball related at all, NFL playoffs are almost here. The Eagles have made it in. How excited are you, and what do you expect from the Eagles?
I would personally like to see an Eagles versus Tom Brady matchup. I think that would be fun. I would not favor the Eagles in that game, but it's been cool to see Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith step up and lead that team into the postseason. Definitely, if you're not already, encourage folks to listen to the Eagle Eye podcast with Dave Zangara and Ruben Frank and follow along with their coverage. To be frank, I I am not expecting the Eagles to make any noise in the playoffs, but tip of the cap to them for making it when I think many folks expected they would not be anywhere near the playoffs this season.
That's Noah Levick. Find him on Twitter at Noah Levick, because he just said he doesn't expect the Eagles to do much damage in the playoffs. Eagles fans, get him. Get him. He doesn't believe in you guys. I just want the Eagles to play an early game on Saturday or Sunday next week. The late games just really ruin my schedule. I'm completely selfish in that way. But this was the Sixers Talk podcast presented to you by WilmU. I'm Ben Berry. Follow me at I am Ben Berry. Follow Noah at Noah Levick. We'll be back next week. Maybe Danny will be back from vacation or wherever he's off to with more Sixers Talk.